going into history books, archives, past art that has been created, to figure out what culture was to someone or to a group of people. But then the other part of that, which I try to incorporate in all of my art forms and the image making, the filmmaking, is emphasizing how a certain group of people promotes and preserves culture today. What actions are we doing today, as artists, as educators, as parents, as whatever, right? Like, how are we contributing to culture today? So for me, it's always this two-sided thing, and could never just fit into one box or one definition, because I think most people maybe think of history and things in the past, but I think a huge, huge, huge part of culture that doesn't get enough support in terms of attention and resources is, what are we doing for culture today by y'all being here and listening to this artist talk, the things that we incorporate into our art practices. I feel like that's equally, if not more important, into the defining what culture is. So that's my take.
So I'm very Cajun. Like I'm a half Petrie, half Hébert, d'Arrangement, down the bayou Cajun. I once got into a fight with someone in Ruston because they were trying to make me wear shoes in Walmart at night. And I had never done that before, and I was like a grown person. And while that's funny, and it's something that a lot of you might be able to relate to, that is part of our culture, right? For better and for worse. And I find that my family's been in Lower Lafourche since they left, since the Dérangement, but it's when you're inside of a culture, it's just the way you are. You don't see it as a culture, it's just a way of a people being. And that's the good and the bad. That's the, coffee at 2 o'clock and the fact that the people, the men in the family are probably going to disappear from hunting season for months at a time. So it's the aspects of your life that I don't think culture seems to be sometimes the aspects of the way you were brought up or the way that you live, if you've had the good luck to live in a consistent place, that you don't see as strange, that other people would kind of look in and go, what do y'all mean? It's when I've gone out into the world as a Cajun, that's when I became aware of what my culture was. Because before that, it was just life. It was the way my family treated each other. It was the way we treated our yard and our world. And I think it's kind of hard to identify that when you're inside of that snow globe. And I think we have another.
Yep. Sorry. Okay, sorry I'm arriving late. I'm coming from New Orleans. My shoe broke while I was leaving the house, But should I introduce myself as far as like name and all that? Okay, so my name is Anne Guillot. I'm a visual artist, mainly, I guess you'd say, but I've always been a cultural story communication teller. I worked in hospitality for a long time in New Orleans, and then nonprofits, did a radio show where it mostly discussed topics like this. And then moved on to art, writing, diary keeping, all that sort of stuff. Like she said, I'm very Cajun, very Creole. I'm from Saint Martinville, and so a lot of these sort of symbols or that would be associated with the culture were sort of thematic backdrops, I guess you'd say, to my life. Like my family works in the horse racing industry. We were boaters to the point, my dad has always owned like at least 4 different types of boats, and he made them himself type deal. So always just very entangled with that, and that's sort of the goal of my art process and practice and results, which is mostly paintings.
A question specifically for Bob, but any of y'all can answer it too if you want. So what specifically has drawn you, especially with this, to create art regarding or about your culture?
That's a good question. I don't know. I mean, I make art about myself. I think that a good piece of art is a journal entry. And you're expressing yourself as I believe it was Bocephus that said, can you make people feel what you feel inside? And part of that is we feel for our culture, and it's a lot of different things. But yeah.
I'm gonna ask my question. Sort of what you were saying too, to bounce off of that when you said you don't really notice that you're different unless you're immersed in some other environment. So I guess when you do that and you see like the huge space that you have to journey to like go from who you are to like who you have to mirror in any situation, and the space that takes to jump, I would say that is a huge part of what fuels, I feel like, a lot of artists who are, trying to capture, a memory making or a cultural type of, I don't know, it's just my take on it. Do you agree, or?
I mean, so I've lived like out of state and I've traveled, and when I've traveled, I've always found people who are so curious about what we are as Cajun people. Like when I've gone out in the world, my mama says, make us sound like we weird. I'm like, Mama, to everybody else, we kind of weird. But my mama says that my mama's never lived anywhere else. Going to charity for nursing school for 2 years doesn't count. So, it doesn't. She says it does, it doesn't. So if you go out into the world, like I had a drunk Frenchman buy me 4 bottles of wine because he wanted to know about the Cajuns. I had people in Germany who were fascinated with learning about where my family came from and how we live down here. And I think that what compels me to work from our culture, because I come from a folklore background, I come from a Dungeons and Dragons nerdy gaming background, and I find that taking our stories and sharing them with people is the easiest way to explain who I am, to bridge those distances. I can turn my accent off. I did live far enough away that I can blend if I choose to. But when I'm in the world these days, I consciously keep my accent on because I want to engage with people. I want to make those jumps. I want to make those explanations because y'all have it nailed down up here. But like you were talking about what we do now, where I'm at, I'm sure y'all saw the reports, New Orleans is going to be open water. What does that mean for us? So, I'm in a unique position of living in a place that the actual ground that made my culture might not be there within my lifetime. So it is an urgency to our preservation. And that's what fuels a lot of my cultural exploration is saving it while it's there to be saved.
Nice. Okay. Won't be next, but good. Okay, so just like the last one, anyone can answer, but I'm thinking of Drake specifically with this question. Sorry. Especially because you do a lot of photography and documentary films and things like that. And so are there any responsibilities that you feel with like representing your own culture, and how do you navigate that?
Here you go with the loaded questions. Yeah, there's a lot of responsibility, even outside of the film work. I work with a lot of artists and musicians who y'all know are pretty emotional and sensitive and just way more aware to the emotions of other people, the state of communities, the state of a city, the state of a country, probably than the average person. I think that weight that artists and musicians, and who I consider all of them in every art form to be some form of a storyteller, whether you're telling stories through quilting or pictures or filmmaking or songs, whether you're writing them or reciting songs, 4 or 5 generations after, right? We're all some form of storyteller. And I think that we feel this weight and this pressure of like, why do we feel so deeply? Why is my sad 10 times harder than the next person's sad? Why when I get sad or mad, I want to go paint it or sing it instead of just cry about it and go back to work? And I have this talk with my friends often that I think that is an echo of the responsibility that we have. I think we feel those things deeper so that we can articulate them deeper. I think we feel those things deeper so we can articulate them deeper, but also find deeper solutions to the things that we face as a people, whether that's for Creole people, whether that's for Black people, whether that's for Cajuns, the Native Americans, whoever it's for, I think we feel those things as deep as we do so that we can find deeper solutions to the things that we face as humans. So that responsibility is undoubtedly there. I think we feel it, and I think it shows up in our work. And I think that's why when it doesn't make sense on paper, doesn't make sense economically, it doesn't make sense for our mental health, we still decide to push through it because we take that burden, we take that weight and the responsibility that comes with it, we take it with pride.
I'll add to this regarding the responsibilities. So when you're working in images, painting, or whatnot, there's a lot of responsibility, especially in a culture like ours that brushes up against things that could be scandalous. Or say you're going to do a painting of a politician, like you might want to let the ideas slow cook because you never know what that politician's the legacy might turn out to be, or when you're painting famous figures or whatnot. And like when you say like your expression is rooted in a process of journaling or just record keeping your feelings, experiences, the things that you see, I think to maintain responsibility, it pays off to sort of let those records crystallize for a really, really long time, because then you'll start to see like how your experiences are moving with time. Like, for example, if you just decide to like record a memory, like for example, chicken fighting was a big part of my childhood. I worked in, the races, stay at the barn all day. There's a chicken, fighting thing in the back. All the kids' parents, raised it. So I wrestled with the idea of recording this memory of my experience for 5 years, but it's like, could be very scandalous. I'm gonna take some time and hold off. It could be hard to explain, to people that have no, sort of background about who I am or what I'm about. Same goes because images are so loaded, you really have to be careful with how you throw them out there because they do have a activation factor, you could say. So that's how I guess I would say one role of responsibility of a cultural storyteller comes to play.
I think it's kind of variable, the responsibilities we have in what we're doing. Like when I'm at Vermilionville, I have an extreme responsibility to get the facts correct. I don't want to be telling people that, Cajuns never went to Canada, that they came straight from France or something like that. I feel when you're making art, you have a responsibility to tell your truth and your emotions. And not that you should be flubbing facts, but it seems like a different primary responsibility to me.
Just to kind of bounce off what you were saying, I have a painting that I did for my book that's a courrier de Mardi Gras, right? It's Mardi Gras on top of the horse. And this was so funny because I was selling my work in Frenchman Street, and there's not a lot of Cajun representation in the quarter. There's just not. I was one of the few. No, well, here's the thing. I had a print of a person in career garb on top of a horse, 4 feet tall, and I had a very nice man from Chicago go, "What in the KKK is this shit?" Right? And like, I was like, "Yo, hold up, let's have this conversation." First of all, I'm using that for the rest of my life. That was really funny. And like, he sat there with me through 2 daiquiris. He drank, but not me. And like, I was able to explain like, what is the courier? Where does this come from? And like, we were Googling things. He had his laptop out. And like, I think that some of the responsibility is showing up with the facts, with the emotions, and with the knowledge to be able to, I did it, I knew there were tourists coming, right? It's gonna make, like, people are gonna react to an image that they think of as a Klan member 4 feet tall in the quarter. But it was to bring about those conversations, to able to share our culture that way, but also making sure that I have the information, that I can inform it accurately and be willing to fill in my gaps. Like directing them to websites that have more information than I had at 2 o'clock in the morning on Frenchman Street.
You had an inverse experience where they were just like never trying to hear it? I mean, being on Frenchman, I think.
No, man, I'm pretty open. Like, I never had anybody who was not open to having that conversation and just walked past with, not that I noticed, that somebody was just like dismissive of the imagery, made an assumption and walked past. I've always had people come at this with a curiosity and with an openness. Whether it was about my Rougarou paintings, my career paintings, or anything, they've always kind of come with like a, well, what is this attitude? Maybe, I mean, people probably walk by, but yeah, they weren't buying stuff anymore.
I would say I don't make a lot of typical like Cajun work, but I would say in grad school I made a lot of work learning French and incorporating that into like my garden practice and making that visual art. And I will say I went to grad school in Vermont, and it was I did feel a certain responsibility to make sure that where I'm from was represented in a beautiful way. It showed the beautiful aspects of it, because whenever I was approached by my advisors, it was always the dismal aspects of the South that they assumed I was coming with. So it was just interesting, made me think of that, and I hadn't thought about that in a while. Okay, so last question before we turn it over to you guys. Y'all can ask questions and get feedback as well. But my last question is, do you ever feel constrained either in your artistic practice or in life by your culture, or not? I feel like it put me in a box in grad school, so.
No, and it's a hard no, and I did think about it first, y'all saw, because I think for most people that I meet that are outside of my culture, I'm the representative. There aren't a lot of people that I interact with that they have to pull out of me that I'm Cajun, and usually if they've experienced a broad amount of Cajunness, then they know what they're in for with the conversation. So I feel like my culture has done the opposite. I don't think it's constrained me in the, like, my glasses don't constrain me, and my culture is the lens that I see the world through. So I don't really feel like the way that I see the world is a constraint. I think that it's a perspective, but our culture here is so diverse, and there are certain aspects of Cajun culture and Creole culture that are constant. But am I not Cajun because I'm not fluent in French? No. Am I not Cajun because I don't know how to drive a boat? I don't know how to hunt? I'm not a good fisher? No. Right? So those things that we think of as typical, I am Cajun, right? And that is, I am my culture. And so if I am unconstrained, then my interaction with my culture is unconstrained.
I think I'm still thinking about that question, but I'm gonna go with my first instinct, which is, I think the answer for me is no as well. And the reason why, I do feel somewhat privileged, because I'm a Creole black man doing cowboy shit. It's already in the 3 first boxes that you could check off about what I do. All 3 of them are very put up or shut up types of culture before I ever had anything to do with it. So I feel like there's some privilege there, where there's no really asking for permission. There's not too much consideration about how someone could feel about something that I would put out or something that I would create as an artist, or there's not that much of a habit of considering people's feelings about how I choose to tell their stories. Not in the cultures that I'm tied to and that I'm born in, and that I also chose to incorporate into my artwork. So the cultures that I'm tied to are very much put up or shut up. If you win, you win, and regardless of color, regardless of age, regardless of where you did it, it counts. A win is a win. And so I think I have that kind of protecting me, and so it doesn't feel like there's any serious constraints or anything really stopping me from within my own culture in terms of preserving it and promoting it in a way that I see fit.
So I think it's a bit twofold, because I am Cajun, so technically any art I make is Cajun art. Mm-hmm. However, if you say Cajun art to somebody, they kind of have an idea in their head, and I feel that can be constricting. Yeah, the fleur de least effort possible. I think it's almost kind of has the same kind of mechanics as different music genres. And if you're in a metal band, you have to have really heavy sounds. You have to have somebody that's got a very growly voice. If you're in a ska band, you need to have horns. You need to have somebody in pants that are way too tight. So I think that those nuggets we all agree on can be kind of constricting, but that you don't have to be constricted by it at all.
First of all, very good question. It's so many great answers. So many answers to that, but I guess I'll go with the quickest one, which was something I sort of alluded to in this painting. Mine is this big saturated color with the sort of hovering head over the book. So I would say it's something I have always found limiting is sort of there's the head, it's just a head, right? No body. It's hovering, it's got some sense that there's some knowledge in there with the book, but no agency, really no, like a loss of the agentic force there because there's no really body to carry out maybe the knowledge that might be in the book or the head. So I chose this image because it sort of represents the Cajun and Creole complicated relationship with women's freedom. For a long time, we were sort of relegated to the domestic sphere. The only books we could write, cookbooks. We'd have to, if we were going to write a book, have to do it, one of those disguised names or, get someone else to publish the material. And there's the famous tale of one of the famous Cajun musicians from the early days who was only allowed to ascend because she was with her husband or something. What's her name? Is that Cleoma? Yeah, so that would be like an old school example, but you still find it showing up in micro times today, little micro things here and there.
What were the constraints you felt in grad school about your? You brought it up.
How the turntables.
There was a box that everyone, or not everyone, but most, just put the South in. I was the only student from the South at all. They just had a lot of assumptions. It definitely hid my accent, and so they were like, "Oh, you don't sound like you're from the South." So I'm like, "Well, it's a little intentional because y'all just want to talk about hurricanes and racism right now." So that's pretty much it. And so whenever I was trying to talk about Louisiana French and a garden kind of practice, but also making visual art about it, it was kind of met with "Oh, well, where's the nitty gritty stuff?" Whereas I thought that was really important to show this kind of beautiful undertone too, as well. So, thanks. I thought about that a while. Does anyone have any questions, comments, or feedback? Not to put you guys on the spot, but no. All right.
That was great.
All right, y'all. Thank you so much for coming and for sitting with us for a good 20-25 minutes and hearing us talk. And enjoy Art Walk. We're open till 8, so thank you.